Hi, I'm Caitlin Shanks, and I'm here with Anna Hockett, and we're so excited to bring you the second episode of Two Blondes and a Printer. It's a Rackame-sponsored podcast where we get to talk about everything from customer communications, tech, data, print, mail. If you can think about it, name it, we're probably talking about it. And of course, the sexy side of print. So Anna, what are we talking about today?
You guys, today I am so excited because we're going to be talking about the role print plays in customer experience, as well as hitting on the role data plays in all things print. To cap it off, we will talk a little bit about the future of print, which we all like to talk about. And even more exciting, to help us talk about all of these topics, we have Sean Kennelly in the house. Chief Product and Innovation Officer at PMG Intelligence in Ontario, Canada. Sean, welcome to the podcast.
It's great to be here. Thanks, Anna.
You guys, I'm so excited because I have had the pleasure of working with Sean in a past life. He's also a very good friend, and above all other things, he's so intelligent when it comes to these topics. So I was very excited to ask him and have him say yes to be on the podcast today. So without further ado, let's kind of get into it. Again, thanks so much, Sean, for joining us. And we can't wait to hear what you have to say.
I know.
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
Maybe just starting off, what were your thoughts when Anna reached out of the blue and was like, oh my gosh, we need you on this podcast? What went through your head?
Well, first I was excited because I love chatting about anything that has to do with data, technology, how that interfaces with different industries and businesses. And obviously, as Anna had mentioned, we have a bit of a past, so it was great to hear from her. And I'm super excited to talk to you guys about this stuff. So.
That's awesome. So Sean, I obviously know a little bit more about you, but tell the viewers and listeners and Caitlin a bit about you and what your role is today, and maybe a little bit about what it's been in the past.
Yeah, sounds good. So I have about 15 years experience in tech, in predominantly financial services, everything that relates to end user applications in finance, to data platforms, to document platforms. My current role and responsibilities predominantly lie around data analysis, data analytics, predictive modeling, machine learning, AI, all the kind of buzzwords you can throw around.
It's a bummer that no one's talking about that stuff now.
Yeah, it's a unique. Yeah, it's interesting because nobody uses those buzzwords at all.
It's like the only thing you hear right now on any commercial, on any whatever, is like AI, machine learning. So you might be in the right space. I don't know.
Hopefully. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, the problems that we tend to solve for clients are pretty interesting, like when it comes to advanced data analysis. So things that our customers can't do on their own because they either, one, don't have the expertise in data modeling, machine learning, and understanding AI and how that, and I hate to use the term AI, but it's very obviously a very broad kind of terminology. But very interesting problems. There's so much you can do with data across every industry and every layer of a business, client facing, internal, that just kind of the skies are the limits. So part of the battle is picking kind of where you want to focus and the problems that you want to solve. So that's kind of my role now is, what problems are we helping our clients solve with data, with machine learning and AI, and how do we come alongside either a data team or a client to help them on their journey. So
awesome. And just so the viewers and listeners know, I met Sean at a CCM company that also, because this is called Two Blondes and a Printer, we're going to keep tying it back to a lot of Sean's experience and a lot of what he's doing back to print. So Sean, tell us a little bit about, what your experience is like in the customer communications or the print space specifically as it pertains to the data and the models that you build and that you manage.
Yeah, so I guess past experience, there's always been this goal. We'll talk customer facing side first. So there's always been a goal, I think, even historically, to use data to drive if you want to call it like the impact of a communication, right? So how are you using data to kind of the age-old like perfect message, perfect time, that kind of thing when it comes to sending, in this instance, we're talking about sending something physical to a human for them to actually tangibly see in front of them. So a big part of what we're doing in that space is really just how do you make sure that a message, because this has always been the struggle, how do you make sure that a message is relevant to a consumer? Like, I can't even count how many times I get from I bank with multiple financial institutions. I get the most irrelevant printed mail to my house that I don't even open anymore because I know that institution fails when it comes to understanding who I am and the things that I care about. So when it comes to data and print and putting something in front of somebody's face, the problem is always like, how can you make sure that it's relevant to a customer? Even if it's a regulated communication, there are regulated communications, there are sales communications, so trying to get somebody to buy or donate or fund or whatever it might be. And then there's your typical kind of like marketing top of funnel type of communication. So you're making awareness, right? You're not asking for money or trying to sell a product. You're just driving awareness. And in through all those journeys is how do you actually make sure that the right message is going out to the right person? The technology typically, it's not a technology problem because there's technology out there that allows you to take and understand. It's like, we have this segment of client that cares about this, so they should get this content and this message in this channel. The technology exists to do that. It's just very often having somebody understand, well, what is that right message? Why is it the best message? And why is it the best piece of advice or product pitch or visualization? The thought that it takes to go into actually doing that is often the gap. And so that's where we kind of often come and help clients, is understanding like, okay, this is the message. This is the right thing you should be talking or educating somebody on.
Awesome.
It's interesting because if you think back to like the Mad Men days where the message was the core of what they were doing, and then things evolved and it was, all right, well, how do we get these great messages in as many different platforms as possible as digital platforms popped up, and then social, etc. And now it's almost the reverse of that, where you do have all of the data and you have all of the platforms, and now it seems like the messaging is where we might be lacking a little bit.
Yeah, and even the content creation, which interestingly AI is starting to help with. Like, if you think of all the tools that exist out there for creating imagery, creating text imagery, creating like even splash commentary, like you can ask, and any large language tool like ChatGPT, or there's various ones out there now, you can ask them to build all of that for you. So if you know, for example, this human is in this stage of life and they typically have these challenges, and like banking is a perfect example because the bank knows almost everything about a customer,
right?
Like, there are industries where you know very little about the person you're sending the message to, so there's only so much you can do, but there are absolutely things you can do. But in banking is a perfect example, is intimately like who they are, how old they are, what their balance sheet looks like, the things they spend their money on. So you can get like extreme personalization. So a financial institution today has really no reason to not be hyper personalized when it comes to even like a piece of mail going out to a client these days. So
absolutely. Well, and especially Mr. Moneybags, who banks at all these multiple financial institutions across the country of Canada, I guess. Like, you're the one to ask, Sean, who's getting all these bank statements. So real quick, we'll let you give a plug to who's paying these large checks, or who are you with right now? Who's the company you're with? We'll let you give your company a plug that allows you to have all these bank accounts across.
Yeah, it's not quite what you're making it out to be, but appreciate it. So PMG Intelligence, that's where I'm at now, and we are a research and data science firm. So part of what I think makes us quite unique is you often have research firms and you have data science firms, and they're two very separate companies. So you have people who on the one side are doing consumer research and they're understanding the markets and understanding customers and preferences and testing product and testing whatever. And that's usually a business. And then you have the other side, which is a data science organization. So people who their job is to actually fundamentally understand the data and then build models and test and predict and prescribe. And you actually operationalize some of the data that comes from a research, typically a research organization or even client environments. And so our company is like a mesh of those two. So we do consumer research. We get data from the market, from customers, from even the government in some instances. And then our data science team uses that to build models and prescribe and predict. So we're not two kind of like separate worlds. We're like a perfect mesh of understanding consumer behavior, understanding customers, understanding the market, but then actually writing tech to kind of to actually operationalize some of that data.
I feel like that would be a good balance, because at what point in which of those separate business models do you actually have someone saying, okay, I might have all this consumer data, but what does it mean? You have to be asking it the right questions to get anything valuable out of it. So that business analyst component, I'm assuming, comes together when you have the tech and the consumer information all in one place.
Yeah, it's gathering the information, having somebody actually understand and quantify and determine something meaningful from that information, and then having enough technical expertise to do something, like to actually create or integrate or pull it together to actually be consumed by a client within, their tools or their ops or their sales team or their marketing team or whatever it might be.
So Sean, typically, who are your clients? Could a technically a CCM provider be one of your clients that's trying to figure out how to further help their clients, or do people come to you directly and then they take your information and then they use it in how they're deciding they're going to market and go to market?
It could be both. Okay. So we've worked with tech in the past. So by tech, I just mean not the actual end user of a platform who's trying to target, right? Trying to build a message, trying to understand a client. We are, again, think of like at 30,000 feet, generically researchers who build models, who understand data, who then solve a problem, right? That's 30,000 foot kind of what we do. Our clients typically are the organizations who are trying to understand their customers better, who are trying to make sure what they're doing is relevant and how they're talking to them is relevant and how they're having conversations with them that are actually going to move the needle for the customer. That's really kind of like our bread and butter. But we have done, again, lots of work in the past with companies that just have lots of data, right? And they want to actually understand that and model it and make improvements from that data. Yeah.
Love it.
Great. So I do have a question. So when it comes to what this means for print, if I'm looking at maybe what data I've been collecting on my customers, or what sort of utilization metrics that I may be collecting on my equipment, on my production floor, or things like that, it's like, okay, well, how can I make these things like AI and machine learning and big data work for me in my industry?
Yeah, there's a couple pieces there, right? There's the internal. When we were talking earlier, I had mentioned the external, the consumer-facing side of things, right? So there's a lot of ways that any organization who is, let's just call it generically, composing and printing and sending documents to customers. You have the external-facing side of it, which you chatted on earlier, but there's also absolutely the internal side of it, driving efficiencies internally, using data and AI. So you can think of any piece of data that we can collect, like volumes, print speeds, material usage, mail speeds, return speeds, like anything that is a data point that tells us that activity or something happened at a certain point in time. You can use that to get really, really specific in predicting almost anything when it comes to an operational business. So predict if you have information about the hardware, for example, predict when maintenance is going to be needed with extreme accuracy, predict inventory that's required with extreme accuracy, or even tell you in some instances how to modify inventory to drive efficiency or decrease cost. Like there's just, it sounds lame, but it's sky's the limit, right? Like anywhere where there's data and you have a process either an internal process or a technical process or a print process or whatever that might be. AI and using that data allows you to, one, understand it better, two, drive extreme efficiency into the process.
Yeah, I like the way you put that because it's almost stripping it back down, because it can be really overwhelming to think, how am I going to get into AI? And you have to take a huge step backwards and just look around and say, okay, what data points am I collecting? And I think that would be a good place for users to start on this journey. And then they can see, all right, from that data, is there anything I can extrapolate from it? Like those efficiency findings, things like that. Before putting it into, a model that might be able to help them in the future.
Yeah, the tools that exist today are interestingly quite user-friendly. Like they aren't, you don't need to be a machine learning developer to start getting into AI and start understanding how it can actually impact your business. Like, this is something that I've talked to a few folks about, which is there are things you can do outside of your partners, like actually implementing a huge AI initiative inside their tools. There's a lot of things that any institution in any industry can do to actually leverage that technology to drive efficiency, because almost any role requires somebody to either understand something to make a decision, or create something, or pull in some data to analyze something. And these are all things that AI can fundamentally save time and drive massive amounts of efficiency into. And there's no cost. There's tons of tools that add massive amounts of value that are actually free, that people can go and kind of start to kind of get into what AI can actually do for their business. So.
Yeah, I love that. You know what? I think maybe after this, we could get your thoughts and jot down a few examples and put those in the show notes when we post.
Absolutely. So I'm curious, Sean, and this wasn't even in the little outline we gave you, but AI, the term AI is so new, and it's everywhere right now, today in 2024. What was the path for you, or what did you see this coming in all of your, because I know you and I probably talked about this almost 10 years ago when we first met, as far as not necessarily AI. No one was really calling it. It was more like predictive stuff and using data to make decisions. That's a ton of the things that you and I used to talk about back in our CCM days. So what did you see this coming, or what are your thoughts around how this has gone?
Yeah, I mean, AI is a very 100,000 foot term for a whole bunch of things that exist underneath it, right? So one example would be predictive analytics or machine learning. Those are aspects of AI, right? So these are just pieces of the puzzle that are part of the big AI umbrella. And because we've been talking about them for years, in our previous life in the banking space, predicting the all encompassing next best product, right? What product should we pitch to a client because of X, Y, and Z? These are things that people have been trying to solve for years when it comes to modeling. Typically I would say relatively in its infancy in how it's delivered, and often with, I would call it probably pretty low accuracy because of the data that they were using to do that analysis and those models. But it's been something that's, people have been doing in certain ways, slow and steadily for the better part of 2 decades. And, to quote unquote see it coming, for sure, because as things advance, it's just, okay, well, we'll just use the next best product as an example. There's, again, in today's world, no reason why, with all the data that's available and all the people who understand data and all the AI tools that are out there, that you shouldn't be able to create in today's space. What 10 years ago was people were kind of guessing, right? They were like, I'm going to build an AI model that Anna looks like Caitlin, and Caitlin has a loan, but Anna doesn't. Yeah. And so let's sell Anna a loan because she looks just like Caitlin, but doesn't have one, right? Those were machine learning AI in its infancy, right? But now you can do so much that it's just an evolution of the concept, and the technology has advanced so much that, yeah, for sure, you were doing it 10 years ago, we can see it coming. And it's just now what's interesting is the technology to run advanced modeling is night and day what it was 10 years ago. Like now it's way more advanced, which makes it more available.
Is that too because we have so many more data points now because so many things are happening digitally? Because
I don't think we have more data points. Like if you want to call it from a decade ago, I don't think we have more data points.
Okay.
Because like a decade ago, we still understand transactional data. We still understood whether people were logging into online tools and how they were using online tools, and whether they, read a marketing ad. We would know if, mail was delivered to their house and when, and, what the message was on that piece of mail. There was a lot of data that people had. 10 years ago, it was just, we have all this data in a big pool and we have nobody that understands it or understands how to build the connections between the data.
Okay.
That was the big gap.
Got it.
I mean, interestingly, that's still a gap because people drown in data, but they don't have either the people or the tools or the knowledge or combinations of those to actually extract value from the data and get it into advanced modeling.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I know you had a question that you wanted or something you wanted to chat about.
Yeah, so I know we kind of talked about driving efficiency if you're in a print shop and maybe ways you can do that with AI or machine learning. But when it comes to the consumer facing, I've got a couple of questions. So kind of talk to me about that and where you see that going, because as we know, a lot of print shops, our customers are changing and they're now demanding not just print, but of course mail, text messages, and orchestrating all of those campaigns together so that, for example, all right, you send a printed piece and maybe you don't get a response. And so you send a follow-up email, you get an open, but you don't get a click. So maybe after a couple of those, you send a couple of text messages, et cetera, and you orchestrate all of that. But tell me what you've been seeing on the consumer side.
Yeah, that's interesting. The whole, we have enough tools and enough data to know that things are happening with consumers. So they've been sent a piece of mail, they've been sent an email, they've been sent a text, how they're interacting with that. I think where people are missing the point a little bit is actually using almost journey mapping the experience to success. So like what touch points were required, how many pieces of mail, how many digital touch points, whatever they were, how many of those were required for a certain type of human that behaves a specific way before they actually, maybe got a piece of mail, called that number or clicked or did whatever. Like how many times do you have to top of funnel make them aware of a specific product or piece of advice or whatever it is? So I think the next stage is there's all this data around, what we're doing, but actually what netted success, and then how do we journey map that backwards? So that's a big part of what you do in machine learning is you look at what made success. So what made us sell something? What did we have to do that? And then trend that across 1 million or 2 million customers. So if we have 2 million clients worth of data, and we know we messaged them these 3 or 4 things, and this is the sequence that it took to actually close a deal or whatever, what's the formula, and then running that backwards and then actually driving the next communication chain with that optimization in mind. And that's where kind of machine learning comes into play very frequently, is taking a look at, again, all of those things that made success, so all those touch points, the pieces of mail, the online ads, whatever it were, the clicks, and whatever it needs to be. And I think in banking, and banking is kind of what I go back to, because it's a very high touch, lots of data, lots of needs kind of an industry, is they are starting to do that kind of thing. And they've been trying to do it for many, many years, is understand, okay, well, like, what did it take to actually sell a loan to a customer or to get them to open an account?
Sure.
So to bring it to like a real life example, Sean, from what you said, like you get pieces of mail from these banks or from financial institutions that you bank with, and some of them you don't even open because it's completely irrelevant to you. In that case, they would take that type of data, like the fact that obviously they don't know that it wasn't open, but they're clearly not using anything to really try to segment and be like, okay, this guy is going to be interested in this because of this. So like kind of reverse engineering that whole process, and they should take a look at like what what is actually coming, because those pieces of mail aren't cheap that they're sending out.
No, yeah, and they're going right into the recycling bin.
Right.
Because I know, like, for example, I know this bank tries to sell me a credit card every 3 months.
Okay.
And, like, I don't need a credit card. Like, I'm not in this stage of life, and I'm not in a financial state and a financial trajectory where I need another credit card.
Right.
So they have some data on me. Maybe, and I think the challenge is when you don't have a lot of data about a consumer or a market that you're trying to message into and mail into, you're kind of limited in how targeted you could be, because you only know there's a diverse audience in that region that you're mailing to. And so for them, in some instances, it's actually a spray and pray, and I'm just not part of the demographic that's going to engage with the message that they're spraying into the geography that I live in. However, it might actually be the most meaningful message for the geography that I live in, because their goal is not necessarily to sell it to me, it's to sell it to the largest percentage of people possible within that geography.
I get it. Mm-hmm. But in your case, I just feel like in a lot of cases, if they aren't using, I mean, spray and pray, that's one tactic, right? To try to sell something, to try to get people to use this card. But in my experience, if they're not getting responses from you after sending multiple, 55-cent pieces of mail, they've already spent $2 on you this year, and you're not doing it. So it could like, I guess what I'm thinking is like, for some of our listeners who maybe are in the print field, like, why this is so important is it could potentially mean a massive money saver, both for their end clients as well as them as the organization that's doing the printing and mailing, to utilize this type of information and to utilize these types of tools that are out there. You see where I'm going with that?
Typically you want to get closed loop data, right? Like, so for example, a bank that's mailing me, they'll know that they sent a piece of mail to my address. They will also know that my address has not subscribed to the product that they're trying to pitch to me. They have all that data, right? They're obviously just either they don't care, or they're not using it, or they haven't closed the loop between the message and the mail that's going out to, is it actually eliciting the sale that we're trying to get? All that data is available.
And that's where, I guess, for me, I'm just connecting the dots in the simplest form, because you know me well enough to know that I like to think about things in like a real world specific example. And in this one specifically, it's like, shame on them for not using that information, because they have that information, but they're not using it. And then they're certainly, if they are using it or looking at it, they're certainly not acting on it. And that's could be costing them a significant amount of marketing dollars, of whatever they're doing. And I guess that's where
the flip side to that, though, is that they could be using data. However, their math says that until we spend $100, that's fine, because the ROI, right? The return, the acquisition cost, right? So they could be doing that. You never know, right? They could be doing that math. They could be using the data just in a different way. So not to necessarily prevent print from going out, but more in a way of understanding the acquisition cost. True. So the acquisition cost doesn't outweigh the cost of sending the mail until a certain threshold, or until a certain point, because they know that if they kind of spray enough mail out that's not specific, that the ROI might be there. And that's also the reality too in print and messaging, and how hyper targeted do you need to be? There's all of that thought process that needs to go in. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? Are you trying to create awareness? Are you trying to sell something? Are you trying to move somebody along a sales funnel? Like, what are you actually trying to accomplish with the piece of mail that's going out? And what is the spend versus the return on kind of what you're trying to actually put in front of a customer?
Caitlin, is this not exactly what we're saying when it's like, it's so much more than just like the ink on the paper? Because there's so much that goes into it that is not just like, fire off a piece of mail. It's a lot more than that. Right, Sean? I mean, that's kind of what you're saying.
That is exactly what I'm saying.
And one trend that I've kind of been seeing that I wouldn't be surprised if it continues to evolve and bloom is that, obviously there's direct mail and sort of marketing-based communications, and then there's transactional mail, and those two worlds have primarily stayed separate. And I wouldn't be surprised if you're taking all of that data you have on the consumers in the transactional space, as well as what you have from demographic data, consumer data on the marketing space, and finding a way to blend those worlds together, because we're not going to get away anytime soon from receiving in the mail election of benefits, your health statements, your bank statements, etc. And moving some of those marketing messages, either awareness, sales, what have you, and targeting those, on those printed pieces in the white space, and just sort of combining those two worlds to, get the most bang for your buck on those transactional pieces that you have to send out regardless.
Yeah, that's something that's been in my previous life, was a big part of the not the elevator pitch, but a big part of the CCM, or communications value proposition, was being able to do more than just present, like we'll use an energy statement, for example, like your bill.
Utility bill.
Yeah, utility bill. It's not just sending, oh, well, here's your bill, and here's what you used, and here's what you owe us, or here's what you've paid if it's auto pay. But actually using some of that space to create awareness of a program or a product or a rebate or whatever it might be. That's been going on for a long time. But where it's starting to get to now, and if you think of the way that social media works, is that it's about hyper personalized micro touch points. Like, you might be flipping through Instagram and seeing like an ad for half a second, right? And it might be not till the 30th one that is relevant that you actually do something about it. And so that's where I think in the print space, people can take advantage of transactional communications, regulatory communications, whatever it might be, to, if you can get the right hyper personalized message, put it in front of them as many times as you can across all the channels that you can. So in the transactional statements, in the regulatory, in the annual statements, in the whatever they are, the marketing documents, it's right message, right person, whatever's going to resonate the most, and kind of like hit them as much as they can, because that's just today's world. You're not going to have somebody look at a statement and spend 20 minutes staring at the ad and then going, yeah, this is really great, right? You got to touch them 100 times before, maybe not 100, but just kind of using a number, X amount of times before they're going to do something about it.
Right? You might only get to them looking at the envelope before they toss it in the recycling bin. So you better have
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so interesting, though, when you really think about the amount of thought and the amount of information that goes into making these types of decisions. Sean, I know we're coming closer to time, but I had to ask, like, what do you think, with all of your knowledge in your background in how the data feeds the print industry or some of these types of communications, what does the future look like to you?
Oh, what a question.
Get your crystal ball out.
Yeah, come on.
Yeah, crystal ball. Like, if you put yourself in the lens of print specifically, I would say that depending on how well people actually accomplish it, so like change manage to actually do something about it, there's no reason that in the let's just call it short term, what you're seeing and how you're seeing information on a printed document isn't always the most relevant piece of information. The same way that, think of, you're scrolling through Facebook and you see an ad that was something that you feel like you said to a friend that you were talking about, and it's now in front of you in an ad, and it's like, oh my goodness, how did they know about this? That everything that goes out in the print world in the short term should be that hyper relevant and that specific. Like, it should be to the point where somebody's getting a printed piece of mail, and if there's marketing space, for example, that they're not saying the same thing, like, what the heck? I was talking to my cousin about this yesterday. How is it on my statement? Because you understand the human, you understand the behavior, you understand the preferences, you understand the things that they're trying to accomplish. You understand even taking all the data from their online traffic and online activity to be hyper specific on things that are being sent to them in the mail right in front of their faces. This should be the way that the print and mail world works as well. Like, call it in the next, 2 years, 3 years. The technology's there to support it. already.
I mean, what a value add if you're a print service provider and you're looking, or even an implant who needs to find ways to cost justify and add additional value to the organization, to be able to turn that back around and offer that as a way of helping, these people who are coming to you, your customers. I mean, they're never going to go and shop, Joe Schmo's print shop down the street. You've got your hooks in them. It's a sticky situation because you know their customers and you're helping get their message across in ways maybe they hadn't thought of.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is super cool and often very underutilized is a print provider typically gets a mountain of information about the customers, right? Like even if you think like, because it's my MO, I'll just go back to banking, right? Like they get everything about that customer.
Right, all that variable bit data.
Transactions, products, balances, did they open a new account? Is it now there? How old they are, where they live? Like they know everything about them. The print service provider has all of that data, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think as the availability of data processing tools and advanced analytics and these, all these machine learning models and AI tools become more prevalently integrated into like the print ecosystem, that they should be able to provide all of that value added service because they're already getting the data. They've already gone through one of the most difficult processes for a client is working through the risk regulatory compliance of proving that you can accept their data and you can hold their data and you can process their data. They've already passed that gate. Mm-hmm. They already have it all, right? So there's massive amount of value there.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a great place to end. That is definitely, I think, the future of print. Anna, anything
Absolutely.
else?
No, I think we might have to do a follow-up with Sean at some point, just because like there's so much, well, like we said at the beginning, there's just so much to dive into and so many different ways to take this. And I think that I love Sean's right. And I think it's just, we're just scratching the surface, and I think that there's a lot to discuss. But Sean, we appreciate your time so much. Caitlin always asks,
I know, before we log off, we have to ask, what is the sexiest part of print, Sean?
Oh my gosh, the sexiest part of print. Why did I think of a great answer?
You can even say data too. We'll give you an out.
Yeah, well, yeah. To me, it's all the data for sure, because I'm a data nerd. It's all the data that goes into the print for sure. Yeah.
And that's something that people don't always think about. Yes, there's variable data. Maybe you're passing that to your print service provider or you're utilizing it, but then it's kind of gone. It's more transactionary. And I think if we drive value from it and drive meaning from it, I think there's just a lot of opportunity for the print industry.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely. Well, Sean, thank you so much again. We like to do a little toast at the end of these. So if you have a beverage handy.
I happen to have one.
Yay! All right, so cheers.
Cheers, everybody. And with that, if you know someone who you think should be on the pod, or if you want to have a drink and chat everything print with us, please contact us at 2blondesandaprinter@gmail.com.
Another huge thanks to Rackamy for sponsoring this podcast and Sean Kennelly for being a great guest.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, everybody.